Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video. I'm super excited to be doing another tier ranking video today. I feel like it's been a minute since I've done one, and it's also been a minute since I've watched one of these videos, and I just think they're so fun. I love watching them, I love doing them. So today I'm going to be tier ranking popular romance book tropes. I was looking at a few like pre-made ones on the tier maker website, and I think the one I'm going to do today is actually one that Sarah Caroli created. Hers was my favorite of the ones that I saw. I didn't go super in depth looking at all the tropes on it, so it'll be kind of fun to go into this a little bit blind and just talk through them together. Okay, so at the bottom, self-explanatory, we have haven't read. If I haven't read one of these tropes, this is where it's gonna go. And then right above that, we have get rid of it. These are gonna be my least favorite tropes that I really do not care for. And then a little bit above that is not a vibe or fan. I would say these are tropes that I don't necessarily hate, but maybe I just haven't seen it done in a way that I like. I'm not like seeking out these tropes. Maybe I'll avoid them a little bit unless I hear really good things about a book with this trope. Just a little bit better than get rid of it. Then above that, somewhere in the middle, is going to be doesn't hit unless done right. Usually a trope that I would say I'm not a big fan of, but sometimes a book will do it really, really well. And then above that is probably like the true middle ground. Not my fave, but also not my least fave. Not really seeking it out necessarily, but definitely not avoiding it. And then above that is I usually enjoy it. These are probably tropes that I generally always like how it's done. And then at the very top, I will read any book with this trope. These are going to be where I put my very favorites. So let's just jump right in. First trope is teacher student. This is one I'm not a fan of just because of the power imbalance. I can't really think of a specific book that I've read that has this trope, but in my mind I just keep thinking Arya and Ezra from Pretty Little Liars, and I actually did kind of like how it was done in there, but again, the power dynamic just doesn't really feel right to me, so it's not one that I'm a huge fan of, but I wouldn't say get rid of it necessarily. I'm going to put it in not a vibe or fan. Fake dating. Okay, fake dating I feel like can be hit or miss depending on how the trope kind of comes about. I feel like sometimes it's a little unbelievable for me, but if it's done in a way where I can suspend my disbelief and I can kind of understand how the situation came about, and then once we get into it, I'm really liking it, I'm going to put fake dating in not my fave, but also not my least fave. Sports romance, I will read any book with this trope, which is something I've kind of realized I feel recently, maybe in the past year or so. I just absolutely love a sports romance, even if it's a sport that I'm not the biggest fan of. I don't know what it is. I feel like sports romances just always have that really good found family with like the whole team, and I'm someone who just likes sports in general outside of books, so I will read all the sports romances. Forced proximity, I wouldn't say that this is like my favorite thing ever, but at the same time, I can't ever think of a time where it's been done where I didn't like it. I think I'm going to put this in I usually enjoy it. Bad boy, good girl. I think this one for me depends, because sometimes the good girl can be kind of annoying and maybe the bad boy is like kind of lacking in other areas, like usually maybe not as intellectual or smart, which I really like to see in a male character. And sometimes I feel like with bad boy, good girl, it can feel super tropey where they put the boy and the girl in like a really confined box and they have very limited traits outside of things that are kind of building up the fact that they're such contrasting characters. I'm gonna say doesn't hit unless done right. Mafia romance, I actually don't think I've read before, but I would like to. I think the Twisted series are mafia romances, and I definitely want to read those at some point. Although I've heard mixed things about them, I still want to give mafia romance a try. Grumpy Sunshine, I'm not the biggest fan of this one. This is kind of similar to Bad Boy, Good Girl for me, where I feel like the characters just feel way too contrasting to where they're like put in a box and it feels super, super tropey. And a lot of times it's like a grumpy guy, and I feel like the guy isn't very smart when he's a grumpy man. And then our sunshiny girl can almost be like too quirky to a point where she's kind of annoying. But I feel like there are some times where it's done well. I'm going to put it in the same section as Bad Boy, Good Girl. I think I feel similarly about it, where it can hit if it's done right. bodyguard romance. I've read a couple of these. I've read The Bodyguard by Catherine Center, where our female main character is the bodyguard. And then I recently read Practice Makes Perfect, where our male main character is the bodyguard. It's not my favorite thing ever, but based on those two books, that aspect definitely wasn't what I liked or disliked about the book. I feel like it didn't really do anything for me either way. I don't know, because I haven't really read it where I'm like, oh, I love this, but I haven't read from it where I'm like, I don't like it. So maybe I'll put it in not my fave, but also not my least fave. Right person, wrong time. Going straight to the top. I will read any book with this trope. My first thought when I hear that is Normal People, which is one of my favorite books of all time. And I feel like I've read a few other books recently with this trope, and it didn't really click in my mind at the time that this was the trope, but then I heard people go back and say, oh yeah, this is a right person, wrong time book, and they're all books I love. So I feel like it just adds tension. It feels realistic, so I love it. Only One Bed. I actually really like this trope. I've heard people say that they don't care for it, and sometimes it can feel a little like forced, like, okay, this is only something in romance novels, this would not actually happen in real life. But at the same time, everything I've read that has had this trope I've really enjoyed, and I feel like it adds a lot of tension. I'm gonna say I usually enjoy it. Love at First Sight. Okay, my first thought is I want to get rid of this one, but at the same time I feel like Lust at First Sight, yes, okay, you can look at someone and be attracted to them instantly. Is that what this means? Or is it like, oh, I'm actually in love with this person? Because to me, that doesn't feel realistic. I'm gonna say not a vibe ban, because I think it just kind of depends. If two people look at each other and have an instant attraction, okay, yes, that's understandable, but I don't really think you can actually be in love with someone just from seeing them right off. Love triangle. I feel somewhere in the middle about this. I feel like all the books I've read that have this, I like it, but I'm not like seeking books out with love triangles. It's not my favorite, so I'm gonna put it in not my fave, but also not my least fave. Single parent is one that I used to really hate, because I don't like reading about children in my books, and usually with single parents the child is a main part of the story. But lately I've read some that I just really enjoyed. I'm gonna say doesn't hit unless done right, because maybe I've just read ones recently that just did it so well that it hit for me. Friends to enemies to lovers. I'm assuming this is kind of like friends to strangers to lovers, where something happens, they used to be friends, but now they dislike each other for one reason or another, and then they come back together. I'm gonna put it at the top if that's what that means, because that is one of my favorite tropes. Age gap, I think it depends on how big of an age gap we're talking. To me, sometimes it can feel like a power imbalance, the books I've read that have had age gaps. If one character is like still pretty young, like freshly 18, and the other love interest is quite older, then I feel like it's a power imbalance situation. So I'm gonna say doesn't hit unless done right, because it really depends on how much of an age gap we're talking and the characters and their maturity levels too. Accidental pregnancy. Although I have read some books that have done this really well, I'm gonna say not a vibe fan in general, because I feel like that situation just is stressful and it stresses me out. Bully romance. I actually haven't read a bully romance, but I don't think it would be for me. I think Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas is a bully romance, which I would like to read at some point, but I don't know, I just can't really see that being something I'd be into. Brother's best friend. Okay, I usually like it. I feel like sometimes it can be annoying if the brother is like super overprotective, and then that usually plays into like the third act conflict. I'm gonna say I usually enjoy it. Friends with benefits to lovers. I can't think of a specific book I read with this trope either. I know I have, but nothing is really jumping out at me or sticking with me. I feel like in theory though, I would like that. I feel like it kind of reminds me of fake dating where they have this kind of agreement situation and it's not really gonna turn into anything more, but then feelings do develop. I'm gonna say not my fave, but also not my least fave. Workplace romance, not a vibe or fan. I think it does definitely depend. Like, first thing that comes to mind when I think workplace romance is like an office corporate type situation, which to me gives the opposite of romance. And I feel like when I'm reading, I'm trying to escape from my real life and not think about work. So I don't want to read about that really. But sometimes if it's like a boss employee type romance where their job is something a little bit more unconventional or not your traditional like 9-to-5 corporate type job, sometimes that can be better. But I just don't want to read about work in my books really. Enemies to lovers is one that I feel like I don't like as much as everyone else. And it's not even for the usual reason where people say, oh, in romance books you can't really be true enemies. It's more so like bad first impression or we don't get along, but it's not like true enemies. We really hate each other. And I do agree that real enemies to lovers is mostly something that can only truly be done in fantasy books. But if we're just talking like light enemies to lovers, I would say not my fave, but also not my least fave. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. I think it kind of depends again on why they're enemies, how it transitions from hate to love. Strangers to lovers, I would say I usually enjoy this one. I guess it kind of depends on the way the relationship is built out. But I do kind of like the idea of something coming from nothing. I do love past history, probably a little more though. But I'm cool with strangers to lovers. I would say I like it the majority of the time. And then childhood friends to lovers, one of my very favorites. We love it. I feel like this is most people's favorite trope. It just hits every time, I think. Slow burn. I will read any book with this trope. I love a good slow burn. I love tension building up. To me, a romance book gets boring once the couple gets together. I like the tension. I like the build up better than them actually being a couple and being set. One of Us is Famous. I've read a few books with this trope recently and I did like it. I can't really think of a specific reason or time where I wouldn't enjoy this, but at the same time I'm not like seeking this trope out. I feel like sometimes if one of the characters is famous, I can't really relate to them because obviously I'm not famous, I'm not a celebrity, so I can't really understand some of the stuff they go through. But I don't dislike this. So I would say not my fave, but also not my least fave. I Hate Everyone in the World But You. This one kind of depends. I feel like it's done well in fantasy books. But if it's just like a contemporary romance, sometimes it can come off as kind of silly. Like if the guy's super grumpy, I feel like I'm not usually a fan of that. So I'm gonna say doesn't hit unless done right, which usually done right means it's in a fantasy. Right person, not enough time. I don't know about this one. This one sounds sad, like there's not enough time because one of the people in the relationship is sick or is gonna die. I don't like that. I'm gonna say not a vibe fan. I haven't read enough sad books, I think, to say I really like them one way or the other, but just hearing that, it makes me sad and I don't like it. Friends to Lovers is my number one favorite trope. I don't think there's going to be another trope on this list that I love more, except maybe childhood friends to lovers. I probably like them about the same, but I just love friends to lovers. To me, it feels so realistic. I feel like it makes sense to me why you wouldn't want to take a risk and potentially ruin a friendship to make it something more if you don't know the other person's going to feel the same way. So it builds so much tension and there's already that good solid foundation of friendship and there is a connection there. So I love it. Good boy, bad girl. Okay, this is a little bit different because Golden Retriever men are my very favorite, and I feel like I myself am a black cat married to a Golden Retriever, so it feels very relevant to me in my life. I'm gonna say I usually enjoy this one. First thing coming to mind is Icebreaker. Insta love, I'm gonna say get rid of it. Similarly to Love at First Sight, I feel like, okay, this could be taken to mean lust at first sight, but insta love, I just haven't read many books where they have this instant spark, instant connection, and then end up really enjoying the whole thing. I like the build up and the slow burn and the tension a whole lot more. I feel like if everything is given to us at the beginning and we already know they like each other, then it's kind of like, what's the point for the rest of the book, you know? Billionaire, I'm actually gonna say not a vibe or fan for this one. I've read some books that I didn't care for this trope in, like some of the Dreamland Billionaires books I wasn't a fan of, but I did like the last book in that trilogy, and then Wild Love was also a billionaire romance, and I did enjoy that book, but I feel like if the billionaire aspect was taken out of that book, it still would have hit the same for me. I feel like that aspect of it wasn't what made me like it or dislike it. So to me, it doesn't do anything for me. I feel like, yes, I like a character who can financially take care of someone, but they don't have to be a billionaire. I feel like that's just so unrealistic. And to me, like the private jets, the trips, everything that comes with being a billionaire and what you read about in those books, it just doesn't really do anything for me. I'd rather have an emotional connection than someone with a whole lot of money. Royalty, I don't think I've read before, but I would like to. Secret relationship. Is this kind of like fake dating, or is this something different? I feel like this is different because you're actually in a relationship, but you just have to hide it from people. Versus fake dating, you're not really in a relationship, but you're like publicly making it known that you're together to the whole world. So kind of the opposite, actually. I can't really think of a book where I've read this, so I'm gonna put it in haven't read. Ooh, Forced Proximity is on here twice, and I put that in. I usually enjoy it, so I'm gonna put this one back to the end. Second Chance Romance, I would say I usually enjoy this one. I've heard some people say that if it didn't work out the first time, then what's the point in trying again? And I don't know, I disagree. I feel like it could be a maturity level issue, it could be just the wrong timing, maybe just certain life circumstances kept you from being together, so I like Second Chance. Oh wait, we have a few repeats. We did Single Parent, we did Workplace, we did Fake Dating, we did Brother's Best Friend, but not Best Friend's Brother, right? I would say I usually enjoy Best Friend's Brother. I think it's so fun because then you get to be family with your best friend if you end up marrying the brother. Marriage of Convenience. To be honest, I'm not really a fan of this one. I think usually the reasons for these people having to get married are kind of silly, and it's just not my favorite thing. Stepbrother Romance, I have not read, and I don't know if I want to. And I think these are repeats, so that is going to conclude our tier ranking. So that is going to conclude today's tier ranking video. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Let me know what your favorite tropes are, what your least favorite tropes are, if you agreed or disagreed with anything that I ranked today. If you have any book recs with tropes that I ranked in the top 2 tiers, please let me know. I want any and all suggestions because I just want to read every book that has my favorite tropes. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss out on any of my future book videos, and I will see you guys so soon in the next one. Bye guys.